Hello, hello. Erica Ayala here. Oh, this is what happens when you go live. You drop your microphone. Thank you for joining me here at Sports Talk with Erica Lindsay Ayala. I am going to be talking about the WNBA. Should they go to Disney if indeed that is where the NBA is headed? So for those who do not know, my name is Erica Lindsay Ayala. This is my new YouTube channel. I am a women's sports writer and nonprofit worker consultant. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the plans that we've heard about returning to sports post-Rona. So we got some news yesterday. We got more news today. But let me know what you think in the comments. The overarching question is, should the WNBA try to go to Disney if indeed that's where the NBA is headed? Ultimately, should we see all basketball at one site? What do y'all think? Let me know. Before I get too far into things, I do want to just take a moment out to say that there's a lot happening in our world between coronavirus and essentially murder with impunity. That's not lost on me. So I just want to honor you and thank you. Hey, Bria, I want to honor you and thank you. You matter, your thoughts matter, your life matters, and hopefully we can come together as a community. Sports, in so many ways, for so many people has been that. So I do want to get into what I think will happen with the WNBA, but I also just wanted to honor that there is a collective hurt happening right now. I honor that, I recognize that, and I support you as you navigate what that means for you. So I just wanted to say that first and foremost, because at the end of the day, we're humans, we're people. Okay, so I live right off of First Avenue, so we might get a few sirens here, but all right, let's get into this. So the question again, if the NBA goes to Disney, should the WNBA go to Disney? Let's go over a few things. And first, I want to point out I have in the description for this video 2 articles. I think maybe 3 actually, but there's 2 that pertain to basketball that I want to get into. The first is Sue Favor wrote over at Women's Hoops World an article that focuses on the WNBA specifically. WNBA and players union seek safety in return to play. So that's over at Women's Hoops World. Then also want to shout out Keith Smith. He's the first person that I saw tweeting about if the NBA goes to Disney World, which we'd seen multiple reports, but he was the first person that I saw tweet something about the WNBA in respect to the NBA's plan. So I wanted to give him a shout out. And as it turns out, he used to work at Disney World. So check out his article. It's entitled "Why Walt Disney World Would Be the Ideal Spot for the WNBA, or excuse me, for the NBA to salvage its season." That's over at Yahoo Sports. And again, I'm talking about, do you think that if the NBA is headed to Florida, should that be where the WNBA goes as well? Let me know in the comments. But I want to start with Sue's article, actually, because, I cover the WNBA. And what I liked about Sue's article for Women's Hoops World is she spoke to the Players Association. And we know that the WNBA, most of us who cover the WNBA know that they came off of a groundbreaking collective bargaining agreement. And one of the things was safety, mental and physical well-being. And it seems as though from the reporting that Sue has done, that is something that they want to keep at the forefront when it comes to whatever the plans are for not even returning. The WNBA season hasn't even started, right? We had a virtual draft. There was no NCAA tournament. So this is really getting things started for women's professional basketball here in the United States. So I appreciated Sue really focusing on that. In the article, it seems as though Terri Jackson, who's the executive director of the WNBPA, is asking lots of questions, including what will a return to, or again, the start of a WNBA season, what would that mean for player safety? Another thing that Sue discusses in her article is she mentions that MGM Resorts has actually offered the NBA and the WNBA room blocks. And so that could potentially be a site where both leagues go. However, that's certainly beneficial to the WNBA as the Las Vegas Aces are there. The NBA doesn't have a fan base in Las Vegas. And again, reports, and we'll get to Keith's article in a minute, say that they're headed to Disney. What I didn't like about what I was hearing about Disney is, and again, shout out to Keith, who I think tweeted this, the WNBA seems to be an afterthought in the plans to have basketball go to Disney World. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things where if you're a younger sibling or hanging out with people that are older than you and they come up with this bomb plan to go play at the local park and you're like, can I come too? And they're like, yeah, I guess. Just don't like say anything and don't complain and, you know, don't ask for any Gatorade or water. Or, you know, it's just, it seemed like an afterthought. So that to me, I don't know. I didn't really like that. But we'll see. All right, so we see Liz is in the comments. Thank you for your comment. Thanks for joining, Liz. I believe the WNBA should go there if the NBA does. The hopes are that if the safety protocols are in place and the players' union and team owners can agree, then yes, together. And I want to go back to also some of the comments when I first posted this. Big shout out to Bryant Payne, Truth Be Told. Some of y'all might know, Truth Be Told. Definitely a neutral site, but I think the WNBA is going with Vegas as their site if the WNBA is to resume. And again, that goes back to the reporting that Sue Favor has done. That goes back to the reporting that I've heard from around the WNBA beat, is that if the WNBA were to resume, we're not looking at a full season. They're probably going to go with some version of the Commissioner's Cup, which was supposed to be introduced this year anyway. And that Vegas and even Mohegan Sun is a potential location. They already have franchises in those areas. They're resort style, not as big as a Disney World resort, and certainly don't have the ESPN, Wide World of Sports campus, but could be something. So that's what Brian is saying. My good friend Cece, they say, my thoughts, and they apologize, they're working. Hopefully you catch the replay. They shouldn't play at all. And I've been hearing this as well. Is it even safe? Cece goes on to say, it's still not safe. And honestly, it's a bit ridiculous that the WNBA hasn't flat out canceled the season yet. That's interesting. A few people feeling that way, that, hey, let's just cancel everything altogether. For those of you who don't know, I also cover women's hockey. I had one more game, the Isabel Cup final, before everything started to get shut down. Once the NBA shut down, it seems like every other league was basically like, okay, if the NBA ain't doing it, we ain't doing it. And that was the case with me covering women's hockey. The determination was made after the first cases of testing positive in the NBA came up. Hey, Miles, thanks for joining. I'll get to you and get your comment in a minute or question. And so they postponed their final, just one game they had for 2019, 2020. They recently canceled that altogether, not returning. So I think there are some people that are feeling that we just shouldn't go back to sports, period. Dr. Courtney Cito, definitely follow Dr. Cito. We keep talking about containing the virus so it doesn't spread outside of the bubble, but there is an underlying okayness with players getting COVID because we assume they will survive. Worst case scenario is an outbreak and we actually lose players. No one wants to write that story. So again, questions if we should even go back to sports. This is coming from Twitter. Thank you, Dr. Cito, for sending that over. Miles, if Disney World opens up to the public, will it be difficult to remain isolated? That's a great question. Thank you, Miles, for putting that in the chat. I think we've already seen with social distancing and, was quarantine and stay in place, that even with state laws, local laws, and businesses opting to only provide service to those with masks, we always see this, even when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, that people will find ways to slip and hop to and fro over that line. So We don't know. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I would imagine that it would be akin to like security at, I don't know, like a big event, a big celebrity event, and they'd probably, or like an Olympics maybe, where they keep the athletes separate if there are spectators or, there's pedestrian traffic at the time. So I don't know. Oh, hey, Sue, thanks for joining. Yeah, we were giving your article a shout out. So Sue, who wrote the article that I mentioned, again, it's linked in the comments, said she'd love to see the league go to Vegas. I think if it's safe, and Sue also saying if it's safe, I think if it's safe for the WNBA, Vegas might be a good choice because they already have a fan base. Again, likely not going to see fans, but it's already a community that has embraced the Aces. They were very close to getting to a final last year, 2019. Great series that they had. Against Chicago, of course, and then against they played the Mystics, right? Because the Sparks played Connecticut. Yeah, so I think Vegas for the WNBA makes a lot of sense. But there have been other comments that I'm getting. Hey, put them all under one roof. There are always these conversations about what will it take to get more support for the WNBA, and doubleheaders have been part of the conversation. Having doubleheaders even at an NBA All-Star game or a WNBA All-Star game. So those conversations exist in the basketball space. Is this an opportunity to make good on that and execute some of those plans? Perhaps. Also have to remember that the WNBA is still in the NBA umbrella. It's a part of the NBA basketball family. So I would imagine that even if there are separate budgets or line item budgets for the NBA versus the WNBA, if you push some of that money together, you make that money go further, either for the tournament style or for the playoffs, or in the future. So, I mean, economically, what does that look like? I honestly don't know, but just, logically speaking, if you can blend money together, that's usually a good thing. All right, what else? Yep, so Sue agreeing that have good fan base in Vegas. We also have to talk about what some other leagues are doing. So right now, as of yesterday, the NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman made some comments about what a proposed plan would look like. As I understand, that plan still has to go through the NHLPA, so through the Players Association. And I think there are a lot of questions. Now you have to keep in mind, I think it's worth noting that the context of the relationship between the NHL and the players, there have been lots of different conversations about what that will look like. I think you're seeing that also with Major League Baseball. Minor leagues has cut off their players, I think, as of the 31st, so this week. And baseball players kind of had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder coming into the 2020 season because of, the trash can, whole banging Astros and Boston, right? The whole Boston thing there. The Mets lost a manager over that scandal. Don't even get me started on, anyway, Mets are undefeated in 2020. Gotta love it. Anyway, so I wonder what those leagues will look like, because there's tension all around. What we see in the NWSL, which is the National Women's Soccer League, they announced this morning that they will be doing a tournament style. That's going to happen in Utah, and all of the 9 teams in that league will participate. Throughout the day, the news cycle has been, though, that players can opt out. Unlike the WNBA, we don't have, I think, official rosters. There have been players that have been moved, traded, waived, that are not reporting, maternity leave, things of that nature. But I don't think we have official rosters yet. And forgive me, anyone in the chat who's follows. I know, Bria, you're here. If there's been an update that maybe I missed, let me know. But we don't have rosters. Women's national team players, from reporting that we've seen, there's some players that have already said they don't plan to participate in the tournament. There are players, so the women's national team, that being from U.S. Soccer, The NWSL Players Association has said that they have guarantees for housing, for safety, for housing for family, including children, and of course the guaranteed pay that will be included for the 2020 season. So that's great that the Players Association is working actively. However, even NWSL players, whether they're domestic or international, from what I understand, will also have the option to essentially they can opt out of the tournament, even though it's been announced with the final or the championship being at the end of July. So I don't know. I think labor is a huge issue when it comes to that. Again, going off of that collective bargaining agreement, everything seems like in the WNBA space that the Players Association and the league are working closely together. We haven't heard players very much speak on the issue. I don't think anything's set in stone when it comes to the NBA or the WNBA. No real plans have been laid out. So it might be a little bit premature, but as we see leagues coming and returning, I don't know, is the WNBA losing time to have even a condensed season? Are we really looking at more of a tournament model? I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. The Sky Show, hey, thank you. Enjoying the live stream. Yeah, so I just talked about the NWSL. Let me know if you have other questions about that. But again, with the NWSL, what I like about the NWSL making this announcement is that the NWSL has had updates, even if it was just, hey, we're not allowing training, but they also have been allowing and have been progressing slowly towards allowing teams to train together. I don't think that that exists right now for the WNBA. I don't know what that looks like for the NBA. I think Swin Cash did a Insta Live. I think she goes live on Wednesdays, actually. And she mentioned in passing that they had players coming to the gym. Again, anyone in the comments, let me know if you know a little bit more about that. But I don't think that that's been the case for the WNBA as far as opening up facilities for training. At least it's not uniform. What the NWSL did is they had a uniform policy that came down from the league, and then different sites followed league protocol as long as league protocol also fit in with the state mandates. And so I think, at least publicly, there's been a lot more communication. I haven't seen those types of plans. And it seems like most WNBA players are doing workouts on their own. And that's going to affect the product, right? That's going to affect the product. Impact of the communities. Oh, I like this question from Liz. Has there been any reporting around the impact on the communities of Florida and Las Vegas? Are they higher risk, assuming that the community would support the teams via food, service, cleaning, etc.? I love that question, Liz. Thank you. And, you know, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think that we've seen that on the sports world. I think that all sports leagues that have considered returning and doing some kind of quarantine or having everyone come to one location. What I can tell you is they're not coming to New York, which is where I am, here on East Harlem, and they're not coming to New York. So I would think that there's some data that they've collected as far as where COVID, just for the general population, like the normal people, where everything stands and what the community looks like from that perspective. But you also have to think you need to be in a place, in a city, that can, to your point, get some of those workers back, that can house the athletes and all of the staff that's going to come. Now, what that looks like when it comes to the safety precautions for those type of workers, what that looks like when it comes to the guarantees of leagues to incorporate local businesses, I don't know. I think all of this we're still figuring out, right? We're still figuring all of this out. So I don't know. I think ultimately, whatever is going to be safest at this point really has to be top priority. I don't know. Is it safer for the NBA and the WNBA to all be in the same place? I don't know. But you know that whatever the decision is, that it's going to be a mix between that safety, immediate safety, and the financial well-being of the leagues. The the WNBA had a lot riding on this season regarding some of the contingencies in the new collective bargaining agreement. And that, I mean, is out the window, I would imagine now. I don't know what conversations are happening between the Players Association and the league to maybe think differently about some of those things. So what am I talking about? So for example, the WNBA, the new collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, was reported to have this great 50-50 revenue split. However, that doesn't kick in or isn't set to kick in until 2021, and it's contingent on 2020 sales. So even if they go to one location, that happens to be a WNBA market, I don't see how they're going to hit those targets. Whatever the targets were that were agreed upon in the collective bargaining. I mean, how? You've got 11 markets that are not selling tickets. There's no revenue. So, I mean, I don't know. This is really a part of me wants to be excited, right? The part of me that is tired of live streaming from my bedroom. I've got to make sure I do my bed every morning now. That's in case, for those who don't know, anyone with curly hair or textured hair, you have to have a special pillowcase. Some of y'all know. Anyway, enough about my pillowcase. Dreamcatcher, anyone? Okay. There's a part of me that wants live sports back, but there's a part of me that knows that there's still a lot we don't know about coronavirus. And then there's a part of me that's like, yeah, put everyone together. Let's have this kumbaya NBA family. But I mean, that's never really been the case. Why would everything be different coming out of this pandemic? I don't know. I just don't trust that. What do y'all think? Like, do we think that the NBA is going to be more supportive? What about media outlets? Are they going to send their NBA, and if they have WNBA reporters, are they going to send the WNBA reporters too if they're all in the same place? Or are they just going to send the NBA writers? And then if they only send the NBA writers, are the NBA writers going to also write about the WNBA? I mean, I don't know. Bria says no. So I don't know. There's a lot that we just don't know. I'm not against the WNBA going to Disney if that's where the NBA ends up. I'm certainly all for them going to a market that we already know appreciates them, which would be Las Vegas. But overall, it has to be cost effective for the league long term, because the Players Association and the league worked really hard on this CBA. And at the end of the day, they have to find a way to stay afloat. We've already seen that this season, the rookies, they had no NCAA tournament. They didn't get to walk a literal orange carpet. It was a virtual orange carpet. I mean, some of this stuff is a little frivolous, but, they get drafted, and some of these players never got to hit the court. Why does that matter? I mean, there's the emotional piece, there's the professional piece of just, making it to that level. But there's also a more practical piece of this, which I think also goes into the fall season, which is when players go overseas. As a rookie, if you're not a top draft pick, you can make your way onto a roster through training camp. Sometimes you won't. But what do you get? You're getting coached by top WNBA coaches and their staff. You're getting training sessions, and you're practicing with and against Olympians, WNBA champions, Eurobasket champions. Like, these are players that have played at the most elite level in your sport, in your profession. You get that. You absorb that. And maybe you don't make that roster, but you come back and you make the roster, you come back for another training camp, or you get a contract to play overseas. But now we're starting to see that leagues are not necessarily going to allow international players to play in their league. I think Australia is one of the leagues. We've seen that in other sports such as soccer, football, that women's leagues are like, we're done. We're not continuing on. We're not going to have a season. In the United States, we've seen that all of a sudden athletes are essential workers. So international players presumably will be able to come over, but in the WNBA, some of that, that came too late. They had to cut down their roster to 12 spots. They had to cut down to 12 spots this week, at the top of this week. Maite Cazorla, not coming. Han Shu, not coming. Maureen Johannes, not coming. Stephanie Talbot, not coming. And do you blame them? Do you blame them? I spoke to an Olympian, played overseas, didn't know if she was going to be able to get out of her overseas contract, came home to Canada. Luckily, her Canadian Federation had said they're not going to the 2020 Olympics, so she knew that was done. But then, had to quarantine herself from her family from coming overseas. And when I asked, what are you thinking about the WNBA season? It's like, well, what's going on in the world? Do I want to be away from my family? Do I want them to worry about me? I'm not in the same country. Will I be able to get out of Canada? Will I be able to come home from wherever I play? So we start that up all over again for these athletes. I don't know. Hey, Kelsey, y'all check out Hoops Talk podcast, Kelsey Trainer. What is it? 6 p.m. PT time. It's going to be dope. She's dropping fuego bombs. I see Bria's in the chat. Bria also got to check out the work that she does. WNBA, NWSL, two dope folks up in here. Oh, Korean. Yeah. Okay. Liz is now, she dropped a Korean baseball league. Do you think there could be some learnings taken from how Korean baseball is operating? Side note, the MLB ESPN coverage of KBO is not very inspiring, in my opinion. Oh, to be honest, I don't know how much it's being covered. I'm usually asleep by the time they're on. It's very interesting. I think that's a really interesting question, Liz, because I think it also amounts to how are countries dealing with coronavirus. Some countries are not dealing with it all that well. And I don't have a lot of faith that they will do any better. I don't know. Any countries in particular coming to mind? Yeah, this one. I don't know. I just think that we have a culture that is a little bit scary sometimes about how and what we're willing to sacrifice at what times for what. So again, I don't really know the Korean model that well. I know that I think I learned on a podcast I was on that has MMA been going on this whole time? Like wrestling and MMA, have they done? Yeah, there was a pay-per-view thing or something like a week ago. These are sweaty people in a cage, and I don't know, or a ring. I don't know. That just seems wild to me. So I don't know. It's hard to go league by league because it depends on what country that league is in to do a roundabout way of kind of sort of maybe answering your question. I don't know. It was MMA. MMA. There's blood and sweat, and that's just like, I don't know. That's kind of weird. Anyway, for me, I wouldn't consider myself a germaphobe, but that's just a lot. That's just a lot coming off of a pandemic for me. Wonder how the U.S. handles the pandemic will impact the future of international players. Yes, that's a great. I've had that concern, Bria, for a long time. That's been a major concern of mine because we've seen in the WNBA players, and again, the Canadian player I was talking about, Nayo Rain-Kakakunwe, she prioritized being with the Canadian national team for the Olympics over the WNBA. She's done that in her WNBA career prior. Emma Miesemann was a player I was really interested to see what would happen with Miesemann. Again, Stephanie Talbot with Australian national team opted not to come. I don't know. And especially, again, apparently athletes are now essential workers. Let's keep it real. Does that also mean women athletes? I have questions, especially given who's the current president of the United States. I mean, I have questions. I think those are legitimate questions, because in anything in our society, somehow it just never quite trickles down to us ladies, right? I don't know. The pay isn't as great as elsewhere, and when you consider the safety and health first, I'm curious. And there's so much international talent potentially to miss out on. Yes, I think the WNBA, we're seeing young international talent. Maria Vadiva, not with LA. I think young international talent is really the next wave of the WNBA. I think international talent for the NWSL is also going to be on the rise. So that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting. When do I get Sabrina in Brooklyn? Well, maybe not till next year, Kelsey. I mean, it's looking like if the WNBA returns, we might not even get basketball here in New York. So we gotta wait. We gotta wait on that one for sure. All right, last few questions. I want to be mindful of everyone's time. There's a lot happening. Make sure you're checking out Undrafted. That is something that Devereaux Peters, LaChina Robinson, Becky Hammond, it's Tiara Ruffin-Pratt, and Erica Wheeler. Hey, hold it down for E. And Erica Wheeler, that's also happening. That's premiering tonight. Go check that out. Just so many things. I've been mentioning the NWSL. I know I mentioned it on Twitter, but make sure you're checking out Meg Linehan. She writes for The Athletic, has her finger on the pulse when it comes to what's happening for that tournament. The Professional Lacrosse League is also doing a tournament. Athletes United is a new model, and they're set to start a 6-week. It's a really interesting, innovative model, but they're set to start a season in August in Chicago. Their model was always going to be kind of bringing everyone to one location, so that's not going to change with coronavirus, but National Pro Fast Pitch has canceled the 2020 season, so what will softball look like? Lots of questions. So ultimately, will we see the WNBA in Walt Disney World? My guess, if I had to hedge bets, is no. I really don't think the NBA had any intentions of including the WNBA. I could be wrong. It just seemed like that wasn't really a part of the master plan. And it does seem like Kathy Engelbert and her team, as well as the Players Association, kind of have other things and are maybe keeping other things on the table. So I don't know. OMG, wow. Did not anticipate what? Of me thinking no, that they're not going to go? I don't think it's going to happen. No, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to Disney. No. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things. Maybe not a lot, but I don't know. I just don't see it happening. I think the WNBA will do their own thing if they do anything at all. And I kind of respect it. I respect it. I think that potentially means that the players will have more involvement and will have more of a say. And going back to Sue, her article, which is, again, linked in the description, it seems like those conversations are moving forward. So we'll see what happens. All right, folks, I'm going to close this out because, again, I mentioned there's a lot happening, lots of amazing people giving amazing commentary on sports. I want to close this out the same way I opened. Again, there's a lot happening in the world. There's a lot of people hurting for a lot of different reasons. And so I just think it's important that we are patient and kind with each other, always spread love. That's the Brooklyn way. I'm not from Brooklyn, but, Biggie said it, so I guess it's cool. Miles, the built-in relationship with his son and aces might come in clutch. I agree. I think if the All-Star game is any indication, players would probably rather go to Vegas than Mohegan, but, we'll see what happens. Liz, thank you so much for tuning in. Bria, you are awesome. Hope to do this again. Make sure to check out Sports Talk with ELA. I have a new New York Liberty podcast. It's going to be a video podcast. It's going to premiere right here on this channel. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Did some research. There's not been a New York Liberty podcast for a while. I know Vincent, anyone who goes way back, Vincent used to run one, but there's not one now, so I'm excited to do that. Also, shout out to The Next. I write for the 9 newsletter, and now we're branching out, and there's a vertical called The Next. It's the High Post Hoop staff coming over to Substack. Make sure you're supporting them. Ooh, Nuts Bolts Sports. With all the momentum WNBA has, it would be epic to see them with the NBA. Great show. I think there's potential there. I don't think the culture is there. I think it could be great. I just don't see that the NBA, WNBA culture is there. But I agree with you. It would be epic. It would be a great show, and potentially could really do great economically. I just don't know with the time that we have and with how things sit that it's going to happen. So we'll see. All right, folks, make sure you're subscribed. Sports Talk with ELA. You can follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active, at elindsay08, ELINDSAY. And make sure that you are hugging your loved ones. Make sure that you're patient and kind. Be a good ally, whatever that means. However you don't identify, make sure you're reaching out to folks, that you're uplifting folks. We all are learning from each other, so make sure you give credit where credit is due. So thank you, Sue. Thank you to Meg. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, everyone here that has been in the chat. Go check out Kelsey's awesome interview on the Hoops Talk, right? Hoops Talk podcast. All right. We're out. Until next time. Later.